For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, The Lost Chapter.
Hey, welcome back to storm-ravaged New Hampshire,
yes.
Where in the middle of Dunkin' Donuts, guess what we can't get today, Russ? Donuts.
Oh.
No donuts at the Dunkin' Donuts anywhere in southern New Hampshire.
Why?
Do you know why?
Because they can't deliver the...
Exactly, because they're delivered fresh every morning, and the trucks couldn't get out last night. No donuts in Dunkin' Donuts.
They do have snow cones, though.
I think they've been shoveling it out from out back. I wouldn't take the lemon ones. That's just me. But yeah, so
Teras, welcome to Dunkin' Donuts.
Coffees and hot chocolate all around, which would make Teras from Canada feel right at home.
It would, eh?
Now, Teras, what is your? I think we've said this before, but at this time of year, what is your favorite donut?
My favorite donut, of course, is the maple donut. It is always the maple donut. It's made, a matter of fact, the Canadian maple donut that has nice maple custard inside the donut.
Now, is that maple custard made with actual Canadian maple syrup or artificially flavored maple syrup?
It's artificially flavored Canadian maple syrup.
Okay, fair enough. All right, good.
Uh-huh.
As long as we're there. So, well, be sure while you're eating your maple-filled Canadian donut, don't drip any on my keyboard here, because I got my laptop out here in the middle of the Dunkin' Donuts, and I'm working currently on my next D&D session here. We're going to be doing D&D 5e with the kids. And since you guys are here, maybe it'd be fun to talk a little bit about how we prepare for and organize our D&D campaigns. And a lot of listeners have been asking me in particular, Craig and I talk about Realmworks on the show all the time, and people are asking, how do you use Realmworks? What do you like about it? How do you sort of organize your campaign? Because really, Realmworks can be a little daunting, right? It's sort of like, in many ways, it's like a giant blank notebook. And there's lots of different ways you can organize your material. So I'm happy to talk about how I did it. You guys can ask me questions. But if you want to talk about, first of all, what do you guys think about, organizing your campaigns in general? Like, what are the things you try to keep track of when you do a particular session? Like, what kind of prep work do you do before a session starts for a role-playing game?
Teras, why don't you start, and then I'll jump in, because I have a sort of limited version of what I do, because I do one thing over and over.
Yeah, I think you got to read it over and over again. Is that your version?
Well, yeah, you need to be familiar with a lot of this stuff, but I only do really I haven't GM'd a campaign in years. When I did GM a campaign, I loved it. I was doing all that. I had stuff like I don't like that feeling of being railroaded unless it's a one-off, which then you got to kind of expect that you're working in a very limited sandbox. But as far as a campaign goes, I really wanted my players to be able to have multiple options, multiple avenues. So it took forever to get some serious depth into the universe that we're playing in. So if they zigged instead of zagged, I knew what they were zagging in or zigging into. And then having that, this was way before Realmworks existed. So, you've got maps, you've got folders. I've got like a filing cabinet full of stuff, and just reams and reams and reams of written information, which was too much in the final analysis. So that, I was ready if they zigged instead of zagged, theoretically, except that none of that information was at my fingertips. So I had all that information, but it ended up being sort of railroady anyway, because I would see them heading towards something I knew was, 3 or 4 file cabinets away, and I would go, oh, but what about this over here? Oh yeah, you get arrested and dragged in that direction. So
yeah. I think it's really important to be able to handle the zig and zagging, but it's also really important for me to know where the storyline is supposed to go.
Right.
So that's my shtick. I try to make sure that I really, really know where I'm supposed to be directing them. And of course, you got to be adaptable if they go somewhere where you don't want to. But
Yeah. So,
and you also got to make sure that you have time to get back too, depending on how limited your evenings are, or whatever campaign you're going for. So I think that it's really important to make sure that you have the structure also, and to know that structure for sure.
Yeah, I'm with both of you. So one of the challenges, and it turned out with the D&D 5e campaign, which actually was the second campaign I started running with Realmworks. Before that, I was starting to put in some of my a little bit of the Mouse Guard, and then a little bit of the Fairy's Tale game in there. But I really went into it deep with the D&D one, and I thought I was making. Well, I did cheat. So so when D&D 5e came out, and this is I think Teras what you're alluding to, they came out with a couple of campaign books, right? The Horde of the Dragon, right? And so this campaign book gives you a set of chapters, and each of these chapters is a bunch of events that can happen to the characters. And I think, Teras, you're hinting at, so if you're running a module or a pre-made campaign, you do want to, I want it to feel like, I think you both said, read it a lot, right? So I want it to feel like it's not coming out of a canned package for my players. I want it to feel like not that I'm claiming responsibility for it, but that I feel like I own it, understand it, and can add my own stuff in as we go, but keep the overall story driving so it actually makes sense, right?
Yeah,
and
I think that's
gets to where you're going. And to do that, I think the biggest stumbling blocks I find as a DM are a couple things. One, you want to keep the flow moving. A couple of things that really break the feeling of reality in a role-playing session are when DMs can't remember the names of their characters,
right?
Or they can't remember, or you need to make up something on the fly. Like the party goes to a town, and you kind of know the basics of the town, and the party decides to visit a tavern. And so you want to give them a little flavor. You don't want to say you walked up to the first tavern you see. You go, oh, you walk up to the giant flying boar. Well, you probably want to write down the fact that you just named a tavern the Flying Boar, so that next time they're in this town, you can kind of call back to it. And let's say they're in the Flying Boar, and they meet a person, you make up someone's name, like, oh, yes, Orc the Merciful is there in the corner. Well, you better write him down so that next time you remember there, and if the character's ever said, where did we meet Orc the Merciful back, 4 months ago? Oh, we met him in the Flying Boar. So that's the kind of stuff that a tool like Realmworks helps you out with, because you can capture that on the go, but you can also organize your material before then. And the other thing you want to be able to do is handle encounters really, really fast and dynamically, right? And the way to do that is to really understand the nature of the creatures involved. So you can't be constantly looking up the stats for Kobold and what the spells do for the Kobold, shaman or whatever in the group. You got to kind of know those quickly. And really, as a DM, you can have two choices there. You can play the D&D so much that you know it cold, which, back when I was 12 years old, that's how I did it. Mm-hmm. Or you can have some kind of tool to look it up, or you can just pause the game and flip through the book. Any one of those things will do. And even if you're running a module where, you have the basic story, the Horde of the Horde of the Dragon, I can't remember the name of this now, but that book, it tells you, like, the party encounters 4 kobolds. Now, the stats for kobolds are in the monster manual. So I got to go to the monster manual, look it up. So what I try to do is, okay, so for example, here's how you give the party choice. And here's one of the things I'm really impressed with in this particular this campaign. So in the very beginning of the story, a little bit of a spoiler here, so I apologize, but I'm not going to tell the details of it. But in the very beginning, the campaign kicks off, which, by the way, is I really like this campaign because it kicks off everything that a kid imagines Dungeons & Dragons about in the first 4 chapters of the campaign. So it captures it all. You start off in this campaign, level 1 character. The very first thing you see is a town under attack by kobolds and a flying dragon flying overhead attacking the town. Like, what a great visual, right? Awesome. And you're standing up there in the distance going, holy crap. And what I did was I tried to come up with all these reasons that my players who just started had attachments to this town. Right? So there's the part where you got to weave your characters into the cool story that you've just bought in your hardcover book. So I had to do all that. And then inside this town, what happens is, so now you're in the middle of a town that's under siege, right? The characters run in there. There's kobolds running everywhere. There's random monstrous encounters. You turn down an alley. Is there a group of kobolds hunting for people? Are there random villagers jumping out of a thing? So what's cool is the book has all these different kinds of events. And then there's different things you can do in the town. Do you want to save the people trapped in the church? Do you want to meet at the keep and see what the main defenders are doing? Can you help them out? Do you want to go over here and see why are they trying to burn the mill? You know, you could do some or all or none of these things, and depending on what you do, could affect how the town thinks of you and how it's going to go forward. So, how do you set all that up? I mean, you're in the book, you got it all there. I could try to read it all to the players as I go, but I got to kind of know it all, right? And if the party starts walking down the street trying to go to the keep, for example, and I roll the random monster counter in there, and all of a sudden, there's going to be one of the raiding bands came out in front of them. It's got 2 kobolds and a salamander in it. What do I do, right? I got to go look up a salamander. Well, that's where the tool like Realmworks really helps me out. Now, in the old days, like, I don't know what you guys would have done. I would have had separate pages in a notebook for each of those different kinds of events, right? Like a page about the church, a page about the thing. And then I would have had somewhere else the monsters, or I would have had a separate encounter for each monster group. But what I can do with Realmworks, which is pretty awesome, is, so for example, you can create different kinds of items in this thing. And it can be anything. There's all different categories. You can create an event. You can create a place. You can create whatever you really want. And each of these things has a bunch of sub-bullets under it. Now, what's cool is, so I've gone ahead and I've created a group called Monsters. And I started adding each of my monsters to this group. And what I did was, so I created a group called Monsters, and I created a kobold in this group. And in Realmworks, you can customize the format of these things. So I actually I looked in the monster manual, and I basically created a category. So it asks me, for example, let's see, let me look at one of these guys here. It was one of the newer ones I've done. Cultist, I think Cultist. Nope.
Excellent radio, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm trying to find a cool one. So, here we go. So, like, I created a category. So the first thing it says is armor class, and then a type of armor, and then the hit points, and the speed. So I create, like, the guard drake, who appears over and over again in the campaign. I create a guard drake in there once. And then I create a kobold in there once. And then maybe I make a kobold leader in there once. I make a swarm of rats in there once. And what I do is, but here's the thing. I don't have to go through the entire book and figure out all the monsters of the entire book. I just go through the part of the encounter, I think the part of this, let's say they're going to be fighting in the city. I go through all the events in the city, and I create a section for event 1, the church, right? Location 1, the church. And I type in the text about the church, and I type in, there's going to be 4 kobolds attacking the front, 4 at the back, or whatever they're going to be based in the book. Now, when I type the kobolds in there, I realize I need to create a kobold. So I go to the monster list and create a kobold monster. And then when I go back to my location and type in kobold, the kobold highlights and hyperlinks automatically back to the kobold monster. So when I read to the players, hey guys, you're at a church, you see 5 kobolds standing out in front, and the ranger says, I'm going to shoot the kobold. You click on the kobold, and you immediately get all of his stats. I don't have to embed them into that particular thing. What's also cool is I've got a bunch of new players. So what I did was, along with that, I've also created on the kobold card, you can attach images to this thing. So I've gone ahead, I took my little camera, and I took a picture of the kobold in the monster manual, and I attached it right to my kobold entry in the system. Now in Realmworks, you can set up your screen to do 2 things. So you can set up your screen on your laptop to show the DM view, and then many of you in business know you can plug your laptop into an HDMI cable or a VGA cable from a monitor. So downstairs in my basement, I happen to have a TV on the wall where the kids play, and I plug that into my laptop and then set up the D&D table right in front of it. So the kids are looking at me, and behind my DM screen I have my laptop, but above my head is a television. And on that television is the extended display of my laptop. And Realmworks automatically has a thing called the player view, which on the extended display will show whatever you flag as the players know about and you want to show. So as players discover things, like they've been to the church, I can click it in Realmworks and let the players know they know about the church. And on the kobold entry, I can click the symbol of the kobold, the picture of the kobold, flag it, the players know it, and say show in the view, and boom, the kobold shows up on the screen. So for my new players who have no idea what a kobold looks like, there he is up there on the screen, and it gives you a really good feeling of, oh my God, it's a kobold, right? What's also cool about this pre-created material from for D&D is all the main characters in this story have really awesome artworks of them. So all the recurring NPCs. So I got pictures of all of them as well. So all my recurring NPCs are in Realmworks, and the other great thing about this is, anytime I've got story happening where they're going to meet, let's say, an NPC named Madrick, I'm making that up. Every time Madrick appears, it links back to Madrick, all his stats, and then Madrick has background material on where they first met him and everything else. So if they forget that fact that they met magic for the first time, say at the Flying Boar or whatever, there it is right in his background material from wherever they're meeting him.
When pigs fly.
Right, exactly. So that's sort of how I organize the basics of it. I go through and I figure out for a particular location, all the potential encounter type things will be there. And what's also good about this process for me is I do type in sort of the fluff text I'm going to read to the players or make some up into each elements of the thing. So like in the campaign book, it'll say what to read to your players when they first arrive at the church, for example. So I'll type that in and maybe I'll add some flavor text for each of the players there. And that gets me to Terrace's point. It's got me physically running through the whole scenario, right? So I know it pretty well. By retyping it myself, now I happen to be a pretty fast touch typist. This might be for everybody. But by retyping just the fluff text myself, I'm driving the story into my brain, and it's right there in Realmworks. So now what's cool is I don't have to find the book and get to the right page to read the description when they find the church. I've got a list of locations in the town of Greenest, happens to be the first town they're in. So in Greenest, there's a bunch of subcategories there. One of them is the church. One of them is the keep. They say we're going to the keep. I click the keep. There's the background material. There's the fluff. There's the links to all the monsters that are currently sieging the keep. Everything's right there. If they want to know more about Greenest, they're like, is there any rivers near Greenest? Well, there's a link right in the keep back to its primary location, Greenest. I can click on that. It tells me all about Greenest. I can find that as well. So but the cool thing about it, I think that's really amazing, is I don't have to know all the monsters first and all the locations. As I build, it just remembers it. It just builds the links in. And so that's what I do with it. And you can do as much of that or as little of that as you want. So you can decide I'm going to make a custom monster template and that I'm going to track all the different stats, or I'm just going to put in the name of the monster and its hit points. It's really up to you how much detail you want to get in there. What I like about this, though, is as I've been going along, like let's say when I was building out Greenest, for example, and all the encounters there, it forced me to enter kobolds. It forced me to enter a big blue dragon. It had forced me to enter, the other things they fought, like the guard drakes and stuff. Now, when they go to the next campaign encounter later and there's more kobolds, they're already in. My realm works, right? So now I've just got to type in, 4 more kobolds at this location. Boom, done. It's already linking back to the kobolds. I have all my stats. I have a cool picture and everything right there, ready to go. So a lot of that stuff's one time. Recurring NPCs show up.
And I gather
already there. Go ahead, Teras.
And I gather then you can move from one scenario to the next, so you don't have to worry about redoing the whole thing. And that's incredible. Well,
there's a couple things you can do. So first of all, so I just keep the entire history of my world is in this system. Now, there's a lot more the system does. All I've been describing so far is sort of the tree, and this is where I would recommend you start. So there is sort of this story almanac mode, and basically it just lists a bulleted list, sort of a tree on the left-hand side of everything in your world. So it's like a category of people, and under there are all the people you have, and you can create subcategories. So I've got the party in there, and under the party I've got each of the characters with all their stats. So if I need to look up, and what's great is I'll have a scenario that says, the party encounters a band of kobolds. So the great thing is, because I have something in my database called the party becomes a hyperlink. So if I need to look up quickly what my daughter's current stats are, I can click on the party, see what her character's stats are, see that she has, detect evil or something, or infravision or whatever, and I can know, she's in darkness, but she's going to be able to see them. Or I can look up her passive perception or anything else. So all that's there, and the things are categorized in multiple areas. So if I need to find the person by people, they're there in the people section. If I need to find all the people I met, for example, in a town, or organizations, there's a group section of groups. So this campaign centered around the cult of the dragon. So as I enter more monsters and people that are members of the cult, I enter them here with all the main NPC's names. So if someone's like, who is that lady in purple we encountered back in Greenest? Oh, you mean, and I look right in Rollmarks, oh, you mean so-and-so. I know her name right off the bat. I look like I'm a very knowledgeable DM, right? So it's really, that's just the basic view of tracking everything. And I've got a group category called monsters. And every time I enter a new monster, I put it in there. And now I have this really long list. I've got ropers in there, and quasits, and sturges, and troglodytes, all because of the things they've encountered. You can then take these items from this campaign, and you can upload them to your central library and have them in any campaign. So by the time this campaign is done, I will have a pretty cool database of most D&D 5e stuff, or a large chunk of it. And then when I start my next D&D 5e campaign, I can build on it instead of start over again, which is pretty awesome. So it's kind of like Army Builder that way, except and I think people can make data files and do that for you, but entering it myself is actually kind of a lot of fun too, because I'm adding things like the pictures and my own, and I've tweaked things. For example, I've made baby bullets and things like that and put them in there. Now, what's cool about that is I made my own version of a baby bullet, modified the monster slightly, put it in my system. Next time they run into a baby bullet, it'll work the same because it's already in my system. I don't forget.
All those times you're going to run into a baby bullet.
You never know when you're going to run into a baby bullet.
That's true. So could be a go-to monster, baby bullet.
Yep.
So you can. Sorry, I'm trying to get my head around it. So you could have a subsection that says that your flying boar bar, and then keep on adding characters into the flying boar. They walk in, they meet this guy one day, they meet this guy 2 months later.
So whenever
and then you walk into the flying boar, you're actually get to walk into the flying boar with your program basically, and say, okay, these people are in here.
Right. So here's how it works. So once I've created the location of the flying boar, right, and I say, for example, they meet this one guy, and I put in the guy's background. The characters meet him. He likes to spend his time at the flying boar. Well, as soon as I type in the flying boar and I hit save for saving the character's description, and this is just open text. I'm writing down this guy's background like this. This barbarian was born so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. He now spends his days in this town at the flying boar, blah, blah, blah. As I type in the flying boar in the middle of my text and hit save, Realmworks says, hey, the flying boar matches this inn. Is that the same place? Kidding. And you say yes. Yeah. And then the hyperlink is created right in there. Now, it's also cool. So I'm describing one view in Realmworks so far, the simplest view and where I recommend starting, which is just a tree view. But there's many, many more ways to view your information. So there's this idea of there's a star view where you can see everything that's connected to everything else with lines. So if I clicked on the flying boar and went to star view, I would see all the things in the game related to the flying boar. I'd see the characters that all went there. I'd see the events that happened there. I'd see the times my party went there. I would see any magic items the party found there. If I said the +5 Holy Defender was found in the magic boar, they would know that. So all of it comes back together, and it's a really great way for also briefing the party on what happens. You're back in Greenest, remember? That's where the flying boar is, where you met this guy. I can summarize it all from like a few clicks in Realmworks, which is really, really powerful. And I do feel like I'm world building, even though I'm playing a campaign that is really, it's got Baldur's Gate in it, it's got Waterdeep in it, it's got all the places, which is actually a lot of fun because although my brother in the campaign knows Forgotten Realms pretty well, to my kids it's all brand new, but it's fun because I feel like I'm sharing famous places with them, right? Hey, that board game Waterdeep, you're about to walk in the city. Kind of thing. So it's a lot of fun to do that. But I'm also building the world because I'm adding little elements here and there. Like I needed a small forest near the town where the dragon was attacking because one of my players was a druid, and I needed to have her living near the town. So I'm like, let's build a little forest here. So I'm adding my own little, touches here and there to make it fun. And it still feels like world building, even though I'm running a campaign. But Realmworks adds to that because I'm still typing everything in. I'm still doing a lot of work. But for some reason, it's a lot of fun for me. So does that all make sense?
Because you're building it for a new group of players. I mean, that's awesome. That's a tremendous thing.
That's what it is. And so that's the first part of Realmworks. So the first two little parts I've shared with you so far is the ability to make these trees of information. And if you think about it, it's actually pretty simple. So really, inside a particular item, and this can get confusing for people too. So when you create a new item inside a tree of information, let's say I created a new group. And let's say I'm going to call this group the Cult of the Dragon. And let's say I want to put a person in this group. Well, when I do that, Realmworks has some default categories for that person, like an overview, a description, that kind of thing. You can customize that. You can add more subsections to this. Now, the tricky part is, in Realmworks, when do you break it out into multiple sections? And when do you just leave everything in one giant text box? Because, for example, let's say I'm creating a keep, right? So I might have a big paragraph. I could have just one overview paragraph. And I could type everything I want to know about the keep in one paragraph. And that might be kind of cool because I just type it all right in there and it would all link to everything just like everything else. That'd be fine. But the thing is to remember is every section can be separately flagged with information and marked as known to the players or not. So you can create a section called the high level, the overview, whatever you want to call it, which is what the keep looks like. And when the characters first walk up, you click this little circle and it marks it green so the characters know that. You might have a section that says things that people don't know or secrets, and you can mark that. If you have multiple secrets about the keep, you might want to break those out into separate sections because you can flag them individually as known or not known. Now, this whole flagging thing is pretty cool because it does a couple different things for you. First, it reminds you as a DM what the player, and it's got these big green dots that are gray dots normally. So if the players don't know about it, it's a little gray circle next to each bullet point under the area. So the keep is built on a mountain. What the players don't know is that it's owned by an evil warlock, right? Mm-hmm. So keep is built on a mountain, players know this. Owned by a warlock, players don't know this. Now, there might be another bullet that the players don't know that in the basement there is a dragon. Players don't know that either. Now, they might sneak in through the basement and find the dragon, but they still don't know what a warlock owns it, so you can flag that. Now, the advantage of that is, here's another cool part of Realmworks. So Realmworks has this concept of game sessions. And how this works is, when you start your session, you click Begin Game Session on the thing, and it says, warning, we're about to start a game session. You say yes. And at that point, you do nothing else. It says, okay, it's Saturday morning, it's 9 a.m., you're starting the session, I'm timing you, go have fun. And then the session's running. Here's the thing. Realmworks remembers everything you reveal to your players during that session. So everything you click in the little green circle on, remember.
Wow.
Boom, boom, boom. And then when your session's over, you click End Session, and now you've got a summary for your players of everything they discovered last session. And all of that's based on everything you typed in Realmworks, and it's really easy to do if you separate your stuff out just so. So that's really cool. Now what's even cooler, and this part's still in the beta, they are working now on player versions of Realmworks. So the players can have their own versions of Realmworks that connect to your version and can review at their own leisure everything that's been revealed to them and sort it by section or everything else. So they can see the world they're in at their leisure, which is really, really cool. So that's another really cool thing. So players don't even have to take notes, essentially. I mean, they should and do, but it's a lot of fun to be able to keep track of that, and it's a great way. I just go to session summary. I go back to that next time and say, okay, last time, guys, quick summary. Here's what you guys did. Boom, 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 boom. And what's cool is when you end your session, there's a screen pops up for any session notes. And this is where I can type in any last-minute notes because maybe the session's running long and everybody's got to go home real quick. And someone's like, oh, we didn't do XP for, the 5 orcs we killed. No problem. Just write down the notes. We didn't do XP for 5 orcs killed. Didn't do this, didn't do that. Boom. And then next session when it starts, I look at there's my last session notes we had to do. Let's go take care of those XP before we get started today. So it's really, really just, it's very intimidating when you start. But really once you get the hang of it, it really couldn't be easier to track a lot of this cool stuff. Is it making sense so far? I know I'm talking a lot of different areas, but what do you guys think so far of this whole thing?
No, I think it's an incredible tool. I think it's awesome. Just the amount of I think it would be really, again, I keep coming back to the flying boar. I mean, you can just load it full of characters and then just forget about them, really. You know what I mean? Yep. You can walk in there and say, okay, well, this guy is here. You can click on him the next time they get there, so they meet that guy next time. And so all this, I think it's still important to really know your scenario really well and to know, like Craig was saying, the zigs and zags, plan for them. But this way, you can easily feel, okay, well, they're in this they went the wrong way, but who's going to tell them that?
Right.
You just click on that guy and bang, he's there.
The thing that most excited and impressed me the very first time we even heard about this, long before it was even a product, was the fact that it builds its own cross-referencing as you go, and it offers you, like you said, Russ, the links. As you're typing in the little history, it's asking you, oh, is this one over here? So you want us to link to that? So it's building almost like an index for you as you go, and it's very exciting and intriguing to hear you talking about that feature just became like fully realized in the final product, which I just think is awesome because it does all that work for you. So normally, you've got all this stuff planned out. Like I said, you never quite know when you're going to need it or where, but with Realmworks, it's like, oh crap, they didn't go to the port. They went to the flying boar and bing, the flying boar is all done for you. It's not going to, like, my big danger for me is that I kind of do stuff on the fly when I can't find it. And then the next time they go to the flying boar, it's the wrong color and on the wrong street and
exactly.
A slightly different size, and the sign is different.
Right.
It was a wing last time, and now it's a pig with wings, and Pete will always call you on that kind of stuff.
Well, a lot of players love to call you on that. And what's cool too is, so like, for example, like here's one of the sections I have. So I have a section here that's talking about seeking the keep, which is one of the first things they were going to do. And I have a line here, for example, that says, and it's just a cause and effect. It says, once the party gathers in front of the Rolling Hills Inn and starts to regroup, this occurs. And I have a bunch of things that happen below that. Even in this one little one-off sentence, the party is a hyperlink, and the Rolling Hills Inn is a hyperlink taking me to the Rolling Hills Inn and the party. But here's what gets okay. But that's not all. This is just the basics, right? So a couple tips though I've discovered in doing this linking thing. When you name stuff, what it does is it bases the link on the full name of what you name. So, for example, if you have a character, my brother's character's name is Lucius Ebenhart. Okay, so I decided in Realmworks I would put in there Lucius Ebenhart, his full name. Now, every time I type Lucius Eberhart, it links back to him. But I really don't want to type Lucius Ebenhart over and over again. So I should have made his full name Lucius. Right? But if you make it really short, like, for example, my daughter has a pet eagle, and its name is Autumn Eagle. Now, if I had named it just Autumn, every time I type in the word Autumn, it would link back to Autumn Eagle. So you got to be kind of careful. What's cool, though, in the latest update they did, which is really slick, is if there are multiple things it could link to, like you have a monster called a kobold, and you have a monster called a kobold shaman. If you type in kobold, Realmworks is like, well, did you mean kobold or kobold shaman? It'll actually ask you that, and it'll default to the one that's most likely, but it'll give you a choice, which you can make that corrected when you go. But that's not all. Okay, so get back to your thing, Craig. What about like maps and stuff, right? So you were talking about the fact is the inn on the right side of the street or the wrong side of the street,
right? Yeah.
So, well, here's another advantage of, and this is why I've been able to put so much time into learning Realmworks' campaign, is because I bought the pre-made campaign. So because I didn't have to invent anything out of whole cloth, I've spent all my time learning Realmworks, basically, is most of this. But so one of the things that's great is inside this campaign book, right on the inside cover, is the map of the Sword Coast, right? The very famous coast where Baldur's Gate's right there, and Waterdeep's a little farther north, out of Forgotten Realms, right? Very famous coast. Any but D&D player of any ilk knows it. Of course, my kids don't because they're brand new to Dungeons & Dragons. So I wanted to be able to show this map on the screen and be able to reveal to them the parts they've seen. Well, not a problem. So I took my camera out, took a picture of the page, and then, or which is also really cool, I love this feature in Realmworks, when you add images, you have a couple different ways to do it. You can add an image to anything as a, upload an attachment, but you can also take it from your clipboard, which is fantastic. What you do is you go on the internet and you search for Kobold, and you can find all the pictures of kobolds from any edition of D&D that's your favorite. Right-click on it, copy, paste, and you can say in Realmworks, pick from clipboard, and it puts the picture right in, which is awesome. Also great for finding maps and things of cities that are well known in the Forgotten Realm coast. So even if the campaign book, for example, this goes to the chance you guys can wander off. Like, for example, in this campaign, there is a city called Eturiel, which has got this well-known city in Forgotten Realms, has this giant orb over it that repels undead, right? It's a side bump in the main quest book. Nothing happens there. The character's supposed to walk right by it. Not my characters. They decide to go in. Whereas the beauty of playing in a known world like Forgotten Realms, I can Google Eturiel, and someone out there in the universe has already built up a whole campaign around it. So there were some cool pictures. So I was able to have a picture of Eturiel on a hill, and everything else. So that was cool. But I got a map so I took the picture of the map, threw it in the map of the Sword Coast. Then what you can do is you can, of course, flag that they've seen, just like you do with the Kobold, and show the entire map. Or what you can do is you can only reveal parts of the map you want to reveal. And you can reveal it by basically coloring it with like a little mouse cursor. So you can have the map first appear black and then slowly shade away the parts you want your players to see. Fog of War, right on your map, which is perfect for dungeon crawling times of the game. So they're actually... Go ahead, Teras.
No, I'm just going to ask a question. So can you take that map that you've liberated from somewhere?
Yeah.
And can you alter that map? Because can you put the flying boar into that city?
What I would do is
say it's right here?
Yeah, I would throw it into Microsoft Paint or another painting tool and do it that way.
Okay.
And then, so I would take the image, I would edit the image any way I want to, and put the flying boar in there. I could also draw a map whatever way I like, either by hand and take a picture of it, or do it in a painting program on my computer. But anyway, I get the image in there, and I could, of course, edit someone else's map and add some things to it. I could edit the Sword Coast picture from the book and add the little forest there that my druid grew up in, that kind of thing. But then what you can do, so you take a picture, like for example, in this particular book, there's a dungeon crawl in chapter 3. Not a big surprise. It's a dungeon crawl. This is why I like this campaign. You're fighting dragons in chapter 1. You're not really winning against a dragon as level 1. Let's be honest. You sort of see one and go, oh my god, dragon! But you get to see a dragon in action in chapter 1. In chapter 3, you're crawling through a dungeon. I mean, you're doing everything you want to do in Dungeons and Dragons in like the first 3 chapters, which is awesome. So you're doing a dungeon crawl. Well, great. Well, they've got the whole classic dungeon map right there in the book, right? All the little caves and alcoves, the little traps, everything you want to see in a dungeon, right? My kids are discovering why you poke the 10-foot pole down the stairs before you walk down there. Didn't know to do that. Now they know how traps work. It's kind of awesome. So you take a picture of that, throw it in your dungeon entry here in the book. And what I did was I created a separate section for each of the rooms in the dungeon, right? Inside that, remember I mentioned multiple sections. So they've been into room 1. Now that's revealed with the players. They've been into room 2. And I had the dungeon map up on my television screen, and there I am uncoloring the parts as they walk through. It says, okay, you're slowly walking down the 10-foot corridor, and color. And they can see the passage. Oh, there's a room to your left, and 3 kobolds leap out, kind of thing. So they thought that was awesome. They loved it, and they were able to follow along. And it just makes it so much more immersive because the whole thing's happening at once. So again, all these tools are built right into Realmworks, which is really cool.
That is, and you can also, I would assume, map out the pig, the boar, the flying boar.
Well, you can,
and then say, okay, this guy is sitting here, this person is sitting here, and then you can have it really detailed that way too.
Yep. You can even mark locations on the map, so when you click them, it takes you to the flying boar. So you can even have the map have locations specifically called out on it that are interactive. So it's really, that part's really cool too. So that alone, so again, though, don't try to do all that once. Just start out with like the basics of getting your stuff organized and get the maps in there. But then, and there's other sections I haven't even gotten to yet in this thing. There's a whole timeline system in this game where you can invent your own calendar system, whatever you want. And then make it all work. So you could say add 3 days, and it knows to go to the 12th of mid-realm or whatever you call your calendar. You can invent. There's a whole journal that tracks each event. There's a timeline of history that gets tracked. There's just a lot more really cool stuff, and they haven't even added yet the dice roller. So there's no tools yet to actually resolve the encounters. You do all that the old-fashioned way, which I actually really enjoy, especially how fast it is in 5e. But they're even adding that to it as well. So they're even adding a dice roll and everything else coming in the future also. The other thing I didn't mention was there's a storyboard view. So the storyboard view, what that does, it's the Horde of the Dragon Queen, by the way. I keep calling it the wrong thing. So I've created a storyboard called the Horde of the Dragon Queen. And initially, I didn't know what to do with this because basically it's a flow chart. I'm looking at this and I think a lot of people start here and get all confused. So I didn't start with the flow chart. I started actually with just my list of stuff and started putting everything together. But then I realized I do want to kind of have a semi-linear series of events, or not linear, but there's going to be a series of progressions, right? So so I put in all the characters as items here, and then I tied them all to how they were going to meet. So 2 of my characters met in one place, 1 of my characters met somewhere else, and 2 others met somewhere else. And so you see those coming together and meeting at these different locations. Now, if you click on these items in my flowchart, it takes me to the entry that I made for them with all the detail around it. So it's another way to kind of look at the sequence of events in your campaign. And what I like about it is you can go back in time and say, what happened when they first went into, Greenest in Flames? That was one of the early things they did. And I click on that and see what happened there. So it kind of links them together, and it gives you a place to branch things if you want to have multiple choices. But I found I haven't really mastered this section yet. I feel like I use player choice branching a different way. So, Craig, you mentioned earlier that it's really important to you, and I think a lot of players like this, that the players feel like they're in an open world. Mm-hmm. And so the way I do that is, it's a trick that I learned from other DMs, and I think some people do this too, is you can always just roll up a random monster encounter. Right. And pre-create those. And those can be fun to just get some ideas in your head and then enter them in the system. So you could say, attack on the road and put that in the system. And then you could create another one that's like, baby bullet, kind of thing. And you can add some depth to it. Maybe it's a little mini adventure. Maybe there's a dungeon under the baby bullet's lair and it leads to a magic item, and there's other creatures that are guarding it, whatever. Or a whole little side quest over there. The thing is, what's nice about Realmworks is you can leave them unconnected to anything. Just stick them in there. Mm-hmm. And then if people go in a direction you're not expecting, here's a DM trick for you. Let's say your party decides to go off to this Arturial city that you're not really ready for them to go to yet. Okay, fine. You guys can go to Arturial. That's great. Off to Arturial. It's a day's ride. Start it off. Oh, phew, fortunately, I have this little side quest here. All of a sudden, you're attacked by, right? And you bring out that side quest, which turns into a real side quest thing. It's really cool. You've got it ready to go. You link it right into your Realmworks campaign now, exactly where it's going to happen. So I've got it already in Realmworks. Now I'm just going to put it into the flowchart and or into the thing that says this is what happened to them on day 3. They ran into, the baby bullet situation, and now the baby bullet encounter is all linked in there. Now it's locked into a spot in the campaign. That takes up a nice amount of time for the day. Everybody has a blast, and now I can figure out what they're going to do in a Turo when they get there after they deal with the baby bullet, right? So there's some really cool. So basically, I have a sort of a little list of things that are sort of unassigned to a location in the world that I can sort of grab and use if and when the party decides to get to a situation that would make sense. I don't know if that's how you guys do the random stuff. That's kind of how I've always handled it. Mm-hmm. How do you guys handle that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's the easiest way to do it.
I think so. And I think Realmworks really facilitates that nicely because you can just put these things in like a group called random encounters or whatever, or, unused encounters. And you can drag them around later, which is great, is you can drag them from random encounters. Let's say you've made a generic inn Okay, or you have it. Let's say I've decided, this whole flying boar thing. I think I really want to make it now after talking about this song. So I'm going to create an inn called the Flying Boar. I don't know where it is yet. I don't know what town it's in. I'm going to put it in my unassigned area. I'm going to create a flying boar. I'm going to create a guy called Magdash. I'm going to put him in there. Maybe the innkeeper's, like Kolth from the book there. He's got his own sword. He's really a demon dude or whatever. So you build this whole background on that thing, stick it in the unused section, and now it's ready to go. And so if the party if I need something really exciting for the party to do, I can drag it in. Oops, now it's in Aturiel. Boom, there it is. And it's there. It's now a permanent part of the city, kind of thing. So I really like that as well. It feels like it's really easy to do that for me in Realmworks also. So I don't know. That's how I'm using it. You guys, does that all make sense to you guys? Any questions or anything?
No, I think it really just lives up to our original understanding of what it was going to be, and it's a very, very exciting tool. Once again, another tool that takes away all the the worry and the garbage, and like I said, I can't find half the stuff I do. I do all this I do all this preparation, and then I don't know where it is. If I had done that in Realmworks, and first of all, it wouldn't have taken as long because it all does all that linking for you. And second of all, it would be very easy either through the map or the flowchart. I mean, any number of different ways graphically organized for you to get to the info. I mean, it almost, once you've done it's almost like a theatrical lighting plot. Once you've put it into the computer and you've got it all lined up, you just keep hitting go and it goes right to where you need it to go.
Yep. Well, you go ahead, Teras.
I've got a couple comments on that. I think that being a good DM means that you need to create belief, right? And that's why when Craig, you were saying, okay, was the sign the same as last time?
Right,
that's why even if they don't remember the sign, if you do tell them the right way it was signed, subconsciously they're going to believe you better, right? So I think being able to have access to that little stuff, and how do you do that as a DM? The amount of scenarios and non-player characters and tons of other supplements that you could use to create worlds is monumentous. And how do you actually use those, right? Well, this gives you a great way to use that and to create that belief system. But I'm wondering, Craig, maybe you might want to comment on this. What a great system for an author.
That's what I have been thinking. That's what I've been saying since they first came up with the idea. I have not yet put that together, which I really should be. I mean, because I think for me, that's a daunting task because I spend so much, basically all of my free time is spent writing, that any time I spend going into Realmworks or anything similar to make to make like an almanac or whatever would be taking away from that. But I think in the long run, it would probably serve me better because now I'm zipping back and forth. I've got 3 different Word documents. I've got one with all my characters. I've got one with all my locations and technologies. I've got one with all my races and planets and all of their proclivities and attitudes and all of that time that I spent doing that, had I had Realmworks and used it, would most likely not only be there as I need it, but be more useful as I go on. So I agree with you 100% that that's a very intriguing idea and a concept, and I wish that I had it and worked with it from the beginning. Now I'm about halfway through the first draft of the novel that I'm writing, and it's daunting that I've got all this stuff, but it's also daunting to think of going back and redoing it in a new format. But I think in the long run, especially if this grows into multiple books, which I hope it will, I'm going to need something like that that's as easily accessible as I think Realmworks is.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Well, if it's a one-off, then yeah, you're right. Why do it? But if you have, again, you're creating that belief system, right? So if you can come back to that instantly and say, you know what? Because authors screw up on that kind of shit all the time, right? You know, I mean, there's some times where they just don't get it right, and most of the time as readers we wouldn't catch it. But if you can make it so that never happens or that happens way less, then that would be tremendous.
Yeah, and one thing too I like, and I don't know if this would apply to authors as much, although maybe it would, because I don't know. I mean, I've never written a book, so I don't know what the creative process is like, and whether or not when you create a character every time if it's going to be a major character or a minor character, and letting you wake up and go, oh, that guy I wrote about in chapter 1 was a one-off. I think he'd really be cool if he came back now and became a major dude. But if that happens in role playing games a lot, because you realize that having some connection back to someone else will be really, really cool. So what I like about Realmworks is while you can enter tons of information about anybody, you can also just create an item in the system and have it be nothing behind it. So if you create a fat innkeeper that's running the winged boar, and I name him, Boris, I can immediately write into Realmworks and say his name's Boris, and I've got it. And later, if I decide to flesh Boris out and actually put in full NPC stats behind him, and Boris is really a barbarian, and he's done blah blah, I can add all that later, and it still links back to everywhere Boris has ever appeared. So you can bring that fleshing out any time. So it's great for DMs, because I know a lot of DMs out there don't do a lot of prep work. There's different styles of DMs. And I wish I could be that way, honestly. I wish I could just be zero prep DM, just sit down and have an awesome experience and not. I just feel too nervous when I do it that way. But if that's your style, you can still, I think, make good use of Realmworks, because you just enter things as you go on the fly, and it still captures it all for you. So, and I wonder if that might be easier for authors to do instead of going back into Realmworks and trying to recreate it. You sort of do it on the fly somehow. But I don't really know how that would work exactly. But just a thought. So thanks, guys, for listening to me stroll on and on about how awesome I think Realmworks is.
No, I think it's a perfect
it's fascinating.
Fit.
So hope you can try it out. I believe there's a demo available, so you can check that out there. And also, Teras, thank you so much for joining us here in Dunkin' Donuts.
No, that's okay.
Sorry there were no donuts.
Yeah.
That's okay. You know what? Do you guys need I got my snowmobile here. Do you need any? Do you need a?
Yeah, I might need to lift home
somewhere.
Can you swing by Bedford on your way to Nashua?
Yeah, that'd be great. Sure. All right.
And I've also got my backpack, so if we have any, if we need some back bacon or something like that.
Oh, back bacon. That sounds good. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Teras, and we'll see you on the main show here in about a week.
Yeah.
It sounds awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.